I think we're all kind of born with this bucket, and some people have bigger buckets, smaller buckets, and I just feel like these babies are coming in with their buckets more and more full. It makes me so sad. That's why I cringe at that study, finding those PFAS in the umbilical cord. It's like, we've got to do better.
If I were to have surgery again, if I were to have a reoccurrence of cancer, there's that weight that sits on your ego that you should be able to manage all these things, and that's not realistic. I think in this game of life that the waves keep coming. When they stop, we're dead. So I have to remind myself to sit down at the end of the day, and I need to write out every single day.
Investing in your health, I think, is a valuable thing to do. And when you have somebody who just has so much experience in the field to guide you, I think it can get you where you want to go much faster than doing it trial and error. When you find somebody, though, that's seen so much and they've worked with so many people and they've seen so many different walks of life and those experiences, they can usually route you in the right direction.
There's so much support for somebody that's going through cancer, but when you have these weird post-surgical complications and you've already been through this real traumatic thing, it's very lonely, it's very isolating. Every urologist or surgeon that I walked into was like, I would never operate on you with a 10-foot pole. You're a liability to my license.
All right, so we're down here in Austin, Texas, and I just butchered his name, so we're restarting this. So I'll let you in on that. Freddie Kimmel, yes, not Jimmy, Freddie. How are you? And thank you for being on the Built for Growth podcast.
I'm so good.
Yeah,
so honored to be here.
Yeah, are you upset that I butchered your name?
No,
I
I feel zero emotional charge. None when people do it because it's
just like a link. I don't know. It's like this
Jimmy Kimmel, Freddie Kimmel. I get it. We're not related.
Yeah.
No, it's great.
Anyways, that's funny. So tell us a little bit about yourself. I find your story really inspiring, and your Beautifully Broken podcast, which I just had an opportunity to be a guest on. So that was amazing. You're a great interviewer, but I can't wait to put you in the hot seat now and talk a little bit. So tell the listeners a little bit about you.
A little bit about me. But let's see. So I work today I kind of work as a consultant in the wellness world. Mm-hmm. I'd consider myself a wellness concierge. I'm certified in functional medicine and biological medicine and sports science associate, blah, 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 blah. Gut Health Institute. I have collected certifications for years. And today I work with a company. I am the head of innovation for a company called Flowpresso. We're a full body lymphatic drainage suit. And I'm also...
How does it work? What's an experience like? If I'm in one, does it squeeze from your toes, up your body? I've only experienced the leg ones.
Yeah, like Normatec. Right.
Yeah, I think it was.
Right. So basically, if I were to put you on a table, I would wrap you up, swaddle your whole body like a baby in a spacesuit.
Okay.
And then there's warm infrared, gentle warm heat, and there's a rolling wave of pressure that is 5 to 6 seconds on each segmentation, and it rolls over the body until we get all the way to the top, and then everything gets a squeeze, and then release and squeeze, and then we start over. And so you just keep getting these recurrent waves for 40 minutes.
40 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, what happens to all this stuff that's lymphatically pushed into the lymphatic system? Do people have to pee afterwards? What is
They do pee. They do pee. I've actually worked with a guy that was in the middle of treatment for... What was he in the treatment for? Oh, goodness. I'm going to butcher the name of his cancer. But he had come right from the hospital.
Okay.
He had
the only one.
he had had the catheter. He had his catheter in. And so his nurse was like, can we do this? I was like, 100%. Got his doctor to sign off on it because it's a medical device. And we watched during the 40-minute session, his catheter bag filled.
See, I was like, yeah, because it has to go, so it has to be processed out the liver, basically, right?
Yeah. Cellular fluid, body fluid. We have 3 times as much lymphatic fluid as we do blood, but there's no pump to drive it.
Right.
So
just our muscles, essentially. I mean, if you move.
Yeah. Your lymphatic ducts are smooth muscle. So they're going to move and gently roll. They're going to facilitate. There's a muscle called the lymphangion, which helps pumping when we're in parasympathetic dominance.
Okay.
There is movement.
Right.
And then there is deep diaphragmatic breathing. 30% of your lymph is deep in the peritoneum cavity. So breath is another way we facilitate lymphatic movement. And It's really interesting. It's like, you'd think that it would just function, but there's a bunch of reasons why it gets restricted in modern day living.
So
modern day
of all the
lifestyle.
things, because I mean, we've talked in your house. I so badly want to come and check it out because it sounds like my kind of like playground.
Yeah.
All the great things. But why dive in with this? Why the lymphatic drainage? Like, what are people missing with this, or what can they gain?
I think it's I think it's the elephant in the room that nobody's talking about.
I would agree. I don't feel like I've really heard that much about this in the wellness world.
I like it. I like to jump in on lymphatics now because it's topical for me. I have a personal attachment to lymphatics, but I'd say that, your lymphatic system, every single lymph node is all your NK killer cells fighting cancer.
Fighting cancer. I mean, fighting cancer.
Essentially, a majority of your immune system starts in your lymph nodes. T cells go off and develop in the thymus. B cells go off and develop in the bone. NK killer cells require no other development. When your body is moving all that cellular waste or fluid, I got to back up to circulatory system.
Okay. Yes.
I have to say that the circulatory system leaks out of the capillaries every day, leaks blood plasma to feed tissues, right? Oxygen exchange, nutrient. And then it reabsorbs. It leaks 20 liters a day. It reabsorbs about 17 liters a day. 3 liters a day is left to manage by the lymphatic system. So your lymphatic system is managing all cellular waste, all environmental garbage.
Is this in an otherwise healthy person? Because I imagine
this is everybody.
Okay, but what if there's like more inflammation? Like, let's say you got an injury or you have a really unhealthy lifestyle. Is someone dealing with more than the lymphatic system is typically staged to handle? Or
100%.
Yeah.
100%. So lymphatic stagnation could happen for a myriad of different reasons, and it will always depend on that person, that terrain. I mean, there's no quicker way to make inflammation and cause lymphatic backup like a surgery to cut tissue.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The visible way, I like, if you've ever fallen off your bike when you're a kid, and you get that like rash, and then like a few hours later it gets that yellow glaze over it.
Yep.
Like crusty yellow.
Yes.
Or when you get punched in the face really good.
Is it white blood cells? I thought it was white blood cells. What is it?
It is.
Okay.
That's lymph. That's your lymph going.
Gotcha.
Your lymphatic system is like, let's repair.
Okay.
So it's something that we don't talk about. I was diagnosed with cancer when I was young, which I'm sure we'll get into, but nobody ever mentioned supporting lymphatics or the role of the lymphatic system in my cancer journey. It was just like, how unfortunate that your cancer spread there. Let's cut that out. And then it was never mentioned again.
Did you have some lymph cut out because of cancer?
I did. I had testicular cancer when I was 26, so I caught it really late. And by the time I got to the emergency room, could barely stand. I had like 9 tumors in my abdomen that were the cancer had spread from testicle to the lymph nodes, on its way to the lungs. And basically the lymph, in my experience, in my understanding, it had done its job. It slowed the progression of the cancer to my brain, and exactly the same cancer that Lance Armstrong had. And what's really, really fascinating is that the chemotherapy that I did and the surgical regimes, the surgery was called a retroperitoneal lymph node dissection, RPLND.
That sounds intense.
They cut sternum to pelvis. They open up your chest. They take out all your digestive organs. They actually put them in a bag, set them in your chest.
Oh, my God.
And then they start cutting away all the lymph nodes because they want to be really careful that there aren't evidence of disease in one of those nodes. So I have in my belly, if I go do an x-ray or an MRI, the doctors are always like, oh my God, what happened to you? Because there's 100 surgical clips in there where they've just clipped the lymph node, because where they cut the node, lymph fluid would be pouring out into my peritoneum, into the belly. So I have this great, it's a great conversation starter whenever I do a new
metal.
X-ray.
Do you go off when you go through metal? Are you one of those people that are like, do you have to?
I don't.
I feel like they always ask that, like, do you have any metal in your body?
Yeah, it's a surgical clip. It's not metal. I have no idea
what a surgical clip looks like, and I was just saying if it was like an X-ray or something and it's showing. Did you see an X-ray?
It almost looks like a bobby pin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now that I have the visual, please continue.
Yeah, it almost So why lymph is why it needs to be center stage is because right now, we're in this pandemic of multiple things, right? We're in a pandemic of loneliness. a pandemic of disconnection. We're in a pandemic of environmental toxicant burden.
Yeah.
It's just, of course, we're on a podcast today talking about this because one of the favorite, because not everybody shares the belief with me. So I talk about this one study in 2022, and they looked at 30,000 umbilical cords, and out of the 30,000 cords, they found positive for PFAS, forever chemicals, in every single umbilical cord. So it's from day one, breath one.
Yeah.
First look at the world, right? We're dealing with a new challenge that the generation before us and the generation before that, it's just different. Mm-hmm. So again, I don't say it. I know it's cringy. But I also think it's awareness. It's where we're at.
It breaks my heart to think of these babies coming into the world with that, already having part of their, their metaphorical bucket for, I think we're all kind of born with this bucket, and some people have bigger buckets, smaller buckets. Actually, Cameron, I had with True Cobb, was explaining this. I was like, that's such a great way. So I'm going to steal that real quick. But we have these little buckets that we're born with, and I just feel like these babies are coming in with their buckets more and more full. It's like, how are children getting cancer? Because we associate stress and cancer, right? A lot of times, like stress is like, well, but these kids are coming in with like physical stressors, hormonal stressors. There's all kinds of stress. It doesn't necessarily have to be like, stress from work. By the way, kids do deal with a lot of stress because they can never really control their environment. Just put that out there too. But it makes me so sad. That's why I like cringe at that study. Finding those PFAS in the umbilical cord. It's like we have got to do better. We've got to do better.
Right. So there's a myriad of different ways in which we can say, I want to be. You can be bulletproof. You can dodge bullets, or you can be able to take bullets. And I think you can't. You could live your life by dodging all the bullets, and I think you'd be a neurotic mess. So I think there's something to be said for like, how can I be or assimilate these techniques to be really resilient and moving lymph, which is I'm of the belief system. I pull from biological medicine a lot. I had a mentor, Dr. Dixon Tom. I would love you to interview him. He's unreal.
Please, yeah, connect
he
us
is like
after this.
He's, in my opinion, he's like the godfather of biological medicine. He's been doing this forever. And
how do you define biological medicine? How is it different than
bioregulatory medicine? So they're really looking at the regulatory systems of the body and trying to bring those back online as opposed to treating, right?
Right.
Even functional medicine, sometimes we can get into, I'm not a functional medicine doctor, but for a long time, I really like pulled heavily from that, but you can get into treating labs. You can treat a patient with supplements and over-treat with supplements, which again, they're a Band-Aid as well. It's like, how do you pull the regulatory system back online? How do you get the lymph really functioning? Majority is going to be lifestyle techniques. So I went back to this idea that we're in this pandemic of like loneliness, disconnection, lack of movement, biological burden of like metals, mold, pesticides. So how do you move lymph? And I think that's nobody's ever talked to me about that. And I had this I had layers start to get peeled back from the onion when I started to work with lymph, which is really only like 3.5 years ago when I just started to really double down. And it was an aha moment for me that I was like, the canal system for all the garbage in your body is lymphatics.
Yes.
I don't like the word non-negotiable because I don't like rigidity, but I do think it's an essential. Like if I had a book to write to hand to little kids, be like, let's talk lymph. There's a great kids book waiting to be written.
Oh, well, are you going to write it?
Maybe. I don't know.
If you do, let me know. I'll get it for my kids for sure.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'll write it. Maybe we'll write it collaboratively. I've got the kids. You've got the knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay. So stage 4 cancer, you're opened up. You have 9 lymph nodes removed, you said?
Yeah, no, I had like 80 removed.
Oh my gosh.
Or more. I've never counted all the clips. The surgery, and mine was like technically, my cancer was they called it 2B staging. So it would go 1, 2, 2A, 2B, 3, 4.
Oh, okay.
So metastatic cancer, it spread from my primary tumor into my lymph nodes and my peritoneum. Yeah. So I had big tumors around like my kidney, vena cava, going to my heart. I had to sign this waiver. I'll never forget this, that they were like, here's all the bad things that are going to happen probably because of the surgery. They're like, you'll probably never have an erection again. They're like, your likelihood of a stroke because this one tumor is wrapped around a vena cava going to your heart. We have to screw around with this great big area of blood supply.
Yeah.
I had to sign this waiver that I was okay with the surgery. I didn't have a lot of choice in this
Right.
moment, but it was really scary. And yeah, it was one of these moments where I was like, oh my God, I can't believe what has happened to me right now.
Yeah.
This is a wild choice to make, or like that I'm empowered to sign this document as a 26-year-old. Shouldn't somebody do this for me? And so they had to get those primary tumors out of there.
Okay.
Even though that I had been through a really big regimen of chemotherapy that had essentially, like, two things can happen with this type of chemo. There's 3 drugs that are like the silver bullet to testicular cancer, and it's etoposide, cisplatin, and bleomycin. There's some other ones today. It's evolved, but it was in the 70s, testicular cancer was a death sentence. You really didn't live because it's such a fast-growing cancer, specifically in young men.
Yeah.
And essentially, so it can melt it and it can just go away. And in that case, if I had this wish list on a board, my doctor was like, if this happens, you'll never do surgery. You're just going to do chemo and be done. I was like, great, let's do that. Mine just hardened into like rocks. And so if I looked on a scan, it still looked like I had tumors. And they had no way to know other than that they could do blood work and be like, well, the tumors aren't making a protein right now, but it's very likely, and we don't know if there's not those little rocks that we see on a scan, those blobs where tumors were, that there's not active cancer in there. And you could be in the same spot in 2 years. So we had to take those out.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was your lifestyle like prior to being diagnosed with cancer?
Yeah. I was so ripped. I was in such great shape. I had like a 12-pack.
Okay.
I was doing music theater. I was a music theater performer from 2001 in New York City professionally to 2018. I retired. And so that whole stint, I was a singer, I was a dancer, I was an actor. I did it all. I was triple threat-ish. I'm not a great dancer. I'm a good tap dancer. But
what did you do? Yeah. So was it like, what was your, what's the right word for it?
The medium, like what?
Yeah. Like what was your, I don't want to say act. I don't feel like that's the right word.
Well,
What
I
are you
did
looking for?
American music theater. So I was in a production of Full Monty. Do you know the Full Monty, the movie?
Oh, I don't think I do.
You
Not
gotta
a big
watch.
movie buff.
It's a good one.
Is it a good one? Okay.
It's a good one. It's a good one. It's a European film that it transferred to the States, and they made a Broadway show out of it. So it essentially it's a bunch of out of work. The musical is a bunch of out of work Buffalo steel workers who are unemployed, down in the dumps, and they watch a professional male stripper show, and they're like, we can do that.
Do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So hilarity ensues
Good.
when these, midlife fat guys and blah, 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 blah. But I play the professional stripper in the show.
Okay.
So I had to do like a strip act on stage. So I was in amazing shape. So that was my lifestyle. You're a professional athlete. I'm doing 8 shows a week, every single week.
Did you eat like what you consider well now?
I had no understanding of health or the body. I just was like a in good shape 26-year-old eating the standard American diet.
Yep.
I was eating
Like you could get away with it then.
Yeah, I did all the things. I was doing, God, what was is it epinephrine? No. What was it? There was a supplement that was like an energy supplement that was big in the early 2000s.
Yes, I tried it too. I know what you're talking about.
God, I wish I could remember the name. We all joked about it.
It's something like that too.
Yeah, it was a metabolism booster.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, so we would eat handfuls of those. I had like probably the crappiest protein from GNC that we would just scoop
right.
as much like powder in the mouth and chase it down. I knew nothing.
I still do that.
I knew nothing.
Like I don't mind. I'm just like, just get it down the hatch.
I double fisted Egg McMuffins on the way to chemotherapy. I didn't even, and I will tell you, before getting diagnosed with cancer, I had severe autoimmune within my terrain. I was not diagnosed with anything, but when I moved to New York City in 2001, it was September 11th. The towers were still smoking. I woke up one day with I went to bed normal and woke up with like full body joint pain, every joint in my hands. I couldn't, when I wake up, I couldn't close my hands. I can still You can see there's still
Oh
stiff.
yeah, there's tension.
There's tension in there.
It's
So
like your skin is tight.
no, it's in the joint. There's like little
Oh.
nodules in here that formed in the joints. Now I had like mittens, so I didn't tell anybody about this. This is a 20.
And men don't.
Nobody. I didn't
Standard
want
male.
didn't want to talk to anybody about it. So I rolled with it, and I had went and got a workup with a rheumatologist, and he's like, you have arthritis, you have RA, but we couldn't find that in the blood work. But here is, interestingly enough, hydroxychloroquine, which is really big talking point during the pandemic, which I had taken forever. There was indomethacin. There was like Advil. You know, I had a nice little bottle of pills that I would take every single day to calm the inflammation and to calm the voice on the pain while I was singing and dancing and doing all the things. And then cancer popped up. It was really interesting. You know, I hear people say this, I was fine till, this happened. I was not fine. There was tons of stuff going on.
Yeah.
Tons of stuff going on within my body.
Oh man, that must have been a tough pill to swallow at 26. I mean, you're so young. You just don't think that we don't think that cancer is a young person disease. And I mean, it was
You don't think that.
becoming more and more young, but I still think that the majority of 26-year-olds are not of the mindset that is even in the realm of things that they need to worry about.
Yeah.
So that must have hit you like a ton of bricks. And how did you process that? And then like, what was your thoughts moving forward, and like where was the turning point when you became more of a wellness guru and said, hey, I think maybe I need some lifestyle changes?
Yeah, it really was. It was like a wild, I always say it's like that scene in, oh God, what is it? Oh my God, why can't I remember the movie now? Old School.
Okay.
Have you seen Old School?
I doubt it.
Okay, well, for anybody who's seen Old School, there's this scene where he gets like hit with a tranquilizer dart, and Will Ferrell, and everything slows down. And he gets pushed in a pool, and like the sound goes out. And it was literally like that when I could not believe what was happening. I had a massive emotional breakdown the second a doctor walked in and told me that I had cancer. I mean, I couldn't even, it took me like a day and a half of crying and blubbering. They handed me a piece of paper. It was like tumor, testicular cancer, advanced. I didn't know what was happening. I got on a plane and flew home and was with my family. My dad was like, get on a plane. Let's get you into a hospital. Because I was in New York City at the time. When I got diagnosed, I didn't have health insurance. I had went into an emergency room because I was in so much pain. And 6 or 7 hours later, I got this diagnosis. So yeah, it was a really quick learning curve. I mean, within 13 hours, they were like, here's where it is. There's cancer here and here and here and here and here. And here's what we're going to start with surgery. And then we're going to do as much chemo as your body can take. You're going to do we can do 4 rounds of this until your body falls apart. It won't take any more than 4 rounds. So I did the 4 rounds and the cancer wasn't quite gone. So we did this retroperitoneal lymph node dissection, which is a wild, if you talk to a urologist or a surgeon, there's like, that's the worst. Like, and it was like I think it was an 8 to 9 hour surgery where my surgeon never left the room. I had a rock star, Ganesh Palapatu. What a rock star. He was so amazing. But I was, petrified. And I remember we were rolling into surgery and I was just in a total state of shock. And I'm going, and they're getting ready to put the mask on me, right, to knock me out. And he was like, hey. And he like hands me a book. He hands me Lance Armstrong, his autobiography, and he slaps it on my belly. He's like, read this when you wake up. You're not going to die. We're going to do it. And I read that book page to page to page the minute I woke up. And that's kind of what kicked it off. I tell people that in a year I was cancer free. In a year I was in a room. My whole family was around me in Rochester, New York. The surgery went bad. First of all, I was supposed to be in there 2 days. I was in there 12 days, tubed, no food, no water.
What?
Yep.
Why?
My body didn't wake up from the surgery. My organs, it's called third spacing. And really interesting thing here with the lymphatic system. After surgery, you're all this incredible amount of anesthesia. My body didn't want to turn on. My organs didn't want to. Basically, you're waiting for your body to fart. after surgery. When you start passing gas,
You know that your digestive
you know you're
tract-
good, right?
Yeah.
Your body's waking up. Until then, they won't feed you. You can't, you're on whatever. You're on IV nutrition. I was on TPN, total paternal nutrition. So they actually threaded while I was awake an IV up through my arm into
Did
one of
that
these
feel
veins
weird?
up here.
Do you feel it?
I did feel it. They told me I wouldn't. But I was like, I feel something. Anyway, they're threading this TPN nutrition in because I needed nutrients. My body started to shut down. And it didn't. My body just started to accumulate fluid. I got to a point one time where my doctor was like, your body will turn on. It'll turn on tomorrow. It'll be the next day. It'll be the next day. I got to a point where I've only told this story once on a podcast. I looked like I was having a baby. I got to show you the picture. And I had 55 staples on my belly, right? One morning, they got my hands to pull me up, and a staple popped. And it started to geyser fluid out over the foot of the bed. And I mean, not a trickle. I mean,
just
like a garden hose on full blast, fluid, and it was red. Like it looked like blood. And I was like, looked at my mom. I was like, I'm dying. I was like, I'm dying right now. And everybody sort of was like, it's okay. We're going to bring you down for a scan. Everything's good here. They're just like, let it drain. Do
you remember what day that was? You said it was 12 days. What day was that?
7, 8.
Because I was wondering, I was like, gosh, all that build of pressure in there may have like also contributed to, your organs not, being able to function when there's all that. Like, I was like, they didn't think to like, I'm not a doctor, but I was like, siphon it or like get some of that out, or I don't know, because I mean, it probably could have helped to get, how are you supposed to pass gas if it's like, so.
Again, I don't
know
anything.
Just my brain, my logical brain thinking. Anyways,
Look,
and if that happened, I'd be like, we need to get that fluid out of there.
And it's fascinating. Well, the second we did identify that the fluid was building up in that way, and it's a condition called third spacing, in which the organs don't want to like start to reabsorb that fluid and do some of the work that the lymphatic would do. Probably the fact that I had so many lymph nodes that were gone.
Yeah, your body's trying to reroute too. I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
How many lymph nodes does a human body have? Do you know?
We have, depending on what medical textbook you pick up, like 600 to 1,000.
Okay.
And you have 300 in the face, head, and neck.
Wow.
So you have this wild amount of lymph nodes in the face, head, and neck. And then, of course, the brain has its own lymphatic system called the glymphatic system, which discovered in 2012, which is always... I find that funny. It was discovered in 2012, where ancient medicine has known forever that the brain drains, right? Our cells all poop, right?
Yeah.
So what's managing that cellular waste? So your brain has its own drainage system, and lymph nodes can get blocked, and it's a system that works under the it's a principle of fluid dynamics. So it's all connected, your lymphatic system.
Yeah.
And again, there's no pump to drive this thing. So imagine you're laying in a hospital bed, you're sedated, partial systems are completely feeling the effects of the anesthesia.
Yeah.
And then you're not, everybody was like, you got to get up, you got to walk, you got to get a walk. They would wrap my body with like a girdle, I've got this big stitching, and this is 2006. So iPhone wasn't out. There were commercials running for the iPhone while I was in the hospital. And I was like, oh my God, look at the things. Yeah. I was like, if I get better, can we get one of those? My dad bought me an iPhone, the first iPhone, which I dropped in a toilet like 6 months later. Long story. But it was wild. It was wild. So I don't have good videos of me trying to walk, but my sister has like a Motorola video of me like waddling down the hall, one hand on the rail. And every day I was up. I was like, I'm going to do it.
It's so painful.
It was so painful. Beyond. And you just feel, you're like, you catch people's gaze looking at you in the hospital, and they're like, oh, that kid's fucked.
Yeah.
Like a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It was hard. It was hard.
Okay.
But I say all that to say that in a year that my brain will track the story back, I was cancer free. And, I had sort of imagined that like, I'm going to have this pivot where I'm going to go back to New York. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to be back in a show. I had booked a show in the Kennedy Center to like sing for the president in a brand new Broadway show that was going to transfer to Broadway. And my dream was to like be through treatment and go right back. My doctor was like, no, You got to change your plans for a while.
Not how it works, right?
No, and right after a year of treatment, when I was cancer free and I was starting to feel better, when I was starting to heal, I started to have this thing happen where the scar tissue from the surgery would obstruct my small intestine. And it's called a partial or complete bowel obstruction. And so your bowel twists and no food, no fluids can get by, and you just start vomiting for like a day or 2 days. They say it's worse.
Gosh.
I know.
You poor guy.
It was rough.
You've been through it.
It was a lot.
Jeez. Yeah, okay.
It was a lot. They say it's worse. They say it's on par or worse. I mean, I don't know how you compare the two with childbirth. That it's just, and it is. It's like, I mean, I could say conservatively, this happened to me 30 times. You know, every year there'd be multiple visits to the emergency room. Sometimes they'd be like, okay, it's not going to release. We're going to open you up. They do the same incision in my belly. That they did it top down. So they'd open it back up, take out a small bowel, stitch you back up, and be like, hey, we don't mean to be negative, but we'll see you on the next one because this is a cycle. This will keep happening.
So what is the end point of that? That doesn't make sense though. It's like eventually you're going to run out of
bowel.
Yeah.
And that does happen. People end up like either with a colostomy bag or they wind up doing feeding tubes. I was definitely on that route. You know, it was very sad. And I will say this, there's so much support for somebody that's going through cancer, but when you have like these weird post-surgical complications and you've already been through this real traumatic thing, it's very lonely. It's very isolating.
Yeah.
Every urologist or surgeon that I walked into was like, I would never operate on you with a 10-foot pole. You're a liability to my license. I had a couple people say that in a row, and I remember like, that was my turning point. It was like, I'm going to have to figure this out on my own. You know, this is not going to come from a doctor's not going to help me. A doctor that I had met to this point was not going to help me. Yeah. And so that's why I became a voracious reader and needed to learn about the human body.
So what were your biggest, your moments? Like where, take me through the process and the things that were kind of big needle movers for you and really, the gauge of everything.
Yeah. I'd say to get off the endomethacin and the painkillers and the stuff for the chronic systemic inflammation. I had read a book about a woman who'd been in a car accident and had like 32 bones broken, and she had went on the paleo diet and that she had no pain. And I was like, okay. And I was doing a show at the time. I literally, when you go to a show out of town, like a regional theater show, you get depending on the contract, you go everybody does a shopping trip together. You go to the store, right? And you load up the refrigerator. And I had bought my normal shit. I had bought like bread and deli meat and, chips or whatever I was eating, pickles.
American diet. Or where you think you're being healthy, right? Standard think you're healthy.
I kind of thought it was healthy. I was like, oh, I'm eating sandwiches.
Yeah.
I'm not getting Twinkies.
Right.
But I was eating crap food. So I switched over to protein and white fish and chicken. I think I cut out red meat, no processed meats at all.
Okay.
And I had a 60% reduction in pain, like joint pain, in a week.
Wow.
Like dramatic enough where I could like take the meds and I could cut it like down to like 1 pill a day where I was on 8. So that was one of those big moments where I was like, oh my God, there's something to the food we eat informs how my body's expressing as far as pain.
Yep.
That was massive. I think other big switches for me were starting to use some technology. I started to get interested, like you, into red light therapy or pulsed electromagnetic field generators, PEMF devices.
Yeah.
I had a really big turnaround with a PEMF device called AmpCoil, AmpCoil. All PEMF devices essentially do the same thing. They deliver an electromagnetic wave which is stimulating or encouraging the natural recovery process of a cell. So I like to explain it like a cell has a charge. It's basically built like a battery. You have a net positive on the outside, a net negative on the inside. They'd call that the transmembrane potential. A magnetic pulse helps to increase that potential. So the cell can let the little sodium and ion move in and out of the channels faster. We get more cellular energy. We recover quicker. There's great science. The science I like to tell people that you could join me as a non-believer is like a non-healing bone fracture. That's a non-union fracture, which a PEMF device is rated to help correct, even after years and years, if you get a strong enough wave on that bone, the cells start to grow that bone back together.
Isn't the body incredible?
Incredible. But the device didn't really do it. It's the signal that told the cells,
Right.
hey, do your thing. So I had this crazy turnaround in which I was having these.
How were you applying the PMF? Like, what was your method? Were you like, what'd you say? Were you laying on a bed? Were you?
I wasn't. So this one kind of looks like a box, and
Okay.
it's got a cable that runs out of the top with a coil, like a gold. It looks like a gold coil with a circle in the middle. It looks like a
Okay.
gold slice of pineapple.
Okay.
So I would just set it on my belly. I'd push play.
Okay.
So I would say over time, I was like, okay, there was a time when I took a trip to like New York to California.
You took it with you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Took it with me. But I was like, I went skiing and then I went to a party and then I had no fatigue. I had no pain. I was like, this is not normal. You know, my body was expressing itself differently. It was wild within 3 or 4 months. And the really crazy thing that happened, one day I was like, oh my God, I haven't had an episode in like 60 days.
Of
a partial obstruction.
Okay.
Yeah. And then finally I got to a point where I had a year of no emergency room. And then now, you know, I haven't had a surgery since 2015. And so I had done like 6. And that I can tell you.
How far apart were the surgeries prior to that? Did you say 6 of them?
Yeah, like 2006, 2007, 2011, 2015. And then like emergency room ER visits that may or may not have resulted in a procedure, a bunch in the middle. Yeah.
So it was, at least annually.
Yeah. It was a lot. It was a lot. And that the gap started to space out between the obstructions and then everything, it was like, the healing is not linear little curly cue that people draw on Instagram. Yep. They're like, healing's not linear. I was like, yeah, beyond, because there were, and I will tell you, I had an episode like 3 months ago where I had pain, and it was the first time I had one in maybe a year and a half. It was pretty good pain. I had to sit down on the floor and do like Lamaze breathing for 8 hours. Like I didn't go to bed, but I didn't panic. I didn't go to the ER. I knew it would happen. In the ER, they're waiting with a knife.
Yeah.
They're going to wait because they're like, this has been 18-hour, 24-hour. What can happen is the tissue can become necrotic upstream or downstream of the obstruction, and then it's dead tissue. Then you can die, or the small bowel ruptures, and they don't really know what's happening inside. So it's scary. It's very scary. Again, my fear response is always wiring. Whenever it happens, I'm like, what hospitals are the best? Like, I'm prepping. I'm like, got a surgeon on call. The trick is really once you're in that emergency situation, there's not a lot they can do. So you got to manage it on the front side. So that's like lifestyle, dietary, scar tissue work, manual therapy. I need to be on top of.
What do you think triggered it, or do you have any thoughts on that? Was there anything at the time that you got a little lackadaisical about?
Yeah, because of the surgeries, I need to be diligent about releasing like the abdominals, all the abdominal wall, all my intercostals. I'll lay on a racquetball or a tennis ball.
Okay. You have to keep that mobile.
I have to keep that mobile.
Yeah.
I have to keep that mobile. And, I'm a type A, dopamine driven. I will ride the rocket all day. So I'd been really working like crazy. I'm writing a lot right now, like putting together an academy.
Yeah.
To teach what I believe in. Because every single week in my DMs is like somebody with stage 4 cancer or MS or Parkinson's or, I tend to get, because of the story, I get people coming in and asking me questions like, what do I do? Where do I go? And I can always say there's definitely places to go for your moonshot. There's amazing work.
You say moonshot?
Your moonshot, yeah.
What's that?
Like your moonshot, it's an unlikely, you're like, okay, I need a Hail Mary win right now. Or I'm in dire straits. And there are clinics like that around the world that are working with late stage chronic illness. And all the things that you and I both believe in about lifestyle and your influence on your genome and lymphatic drainage and morning light exposure and the ability to regulate temperature and nervous system tone, all of those things play into how my body's expressing. And I will tell you my instance, like a few months ago, I had let stress build up. I had set aside some of my essential principles that I would always do. And I think it was just a perfect storm.
You were human for a minute.
I was human.
It happens. Oh, but in your case, it's like a hefty price to pay. You've got to really, it sounds like
Yeah.
you're very diligent about staying on top of those things and making sure
Yeah.
that, you know, this doesn't get away from you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's scary because also when you're like public with your life, you know, and you speak about this for a living and you go around and you share your story and you know, share your knowledge, it feels very, my ego, you know, you just feel like, oh, well, if I were to have surgery again, if I were to have a reoccurrence of cancer, you know, there's that weight that sits on your ego that you should be able to manage all these things. And that's not realistic, you know? Again, like
it's not always the case.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think in this game of life that the waves keep coming. When they stop, we're dead. So I have to remind myself to sit down at the end of the day, and I need to like write out every single day what I'm thankful for. And I will tell you, when I wake up in the morning, every morning, it's not lost on me that I wake up. Every cup of coffee, every time I walk into like a downward dog and I can like stretch and flip over and do a bridge or do a handstand. And I mean, I could still do a front flip on the trampoline. Not got my back flips back yet because there's a lot of scar tissue here, but I'm always pushing, you know, I'm always pushing to see what I can regain. I was a big snowboarder growing up.
Okay.
Yeah.
I skied.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally different. But I tried one time. My friend and I, we swapped skis and snowboards. I was like, this is stupid.
Yeah.
I was like, it's really hard. I was like, I'm either like bashing my spine and tailbone to the ground or, you know, or breaking my wrists or it's my face.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I don't know why people do this. Why don't they just go down straight?
Yeah. I'll tell you, I just took my partner snowboarding for the first time. She's super athletic, badass, CrossFitter, ripped, you know, anything physical she could do. And it was her first time on a snowboard. And I just, in my head, I was like, oh my God, she's going to be amazing because she's so athletic. And she had a tough time.
Yeah.
She had a tough time. She's been a few times now. And I'd say by the third day, she really started to be like, okay, I'm like watching her start to like connect the muscle memory, starting to get it. Mm-hmm. But I think it's if you're going to go once, just go ski.
Right.
However, if you want to, I think you can get better faster. I think you can be really good at snowboarding if you go all in and just go for like a week and a half and go get an instructor. You can be really good. And it's so fun.
Yeah.
It's like surfing.
Yeah, I haven't surfed a lot either. I've gone a couple times, but I had a blast. You know, just learning.
It's
getting
so
up
fun.
on the board for the first time and like riding. You're just like, oh my gosh, I did it. This is amazing.
I feel so alive when I snowboard.
Yeah,
because you're in nature. You know, we just went to this place in Montana with my bestie. We went to Bridger Bowl, which is like there's a place in Montana called Big Sky, which is massive. And then Bridger Bowl is like it's a national park, I believe. It's the Park Service owns the land. It's a smaller. There's avalanches there. While we were there, like the next week, one of the lifts got buried in an avalanche. It's a massive mountain, but you're there among these massive pine trees and like you're just immersed and you're like, this is incredible. It's like there's a level of freedom when you're just like hitting that edge and everything melts away and it's just like beyond. It's a transcendent flow state for me.
Yeah, no, it sounds. I mean, I've been there as far as the skiing goes. I skied in the Swiss Alps and it was just. Oh, that was incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I always hate to waste a good day of skiing on learning to snowboard.
I get it.
Right?
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. But if you can ever go.
Have you skied?
Oh, yeah. I grew up skiing.
Okay.
I got pictures. I just saw a picture of my mom on Mother's Day. I posted a picture. And my mom has a picture of me. Could have barely been taking steps. I'm on skis and I'm on like a thing. And they've got me like swaddled in this little ball. You know, pushing me down this little baby hill. So from when I could, you know, from when I was a baby till whenever, I snowboarding was like new. Mm-hmm. You know, it was like invented when I was a kid. I'm 47. So I had begged my dad to let me try snowboarding. And I got on a snowboard. I was like, I will never ski again. I mean, I was hooked. Yeah.
I love it.
It's so good.
let's I want to pick your brain a little bit more about what you've done to help your immune system, because in my basic understanding of cancer and the immune system and how it works, and I really want you to add to this, 'cause I'm sure you're much more knowledgeable than I am, but my preliminary understanding is that, we all make cancer cells every day, right? And
Every day.
Yeah,
We have
all of
cancer
us.
right now.
Right. But our natural killer cells, the NK, right, is responsible for detecting those and getting rid of them. And when that fails to happen, now I understand our immune system is also a very it needs a lot of energy and it needs a lot of resources to be optimal. So when our immune system is not optimal, right, then cancer can actually become problematic. What are you doing to because once you've had cancer, right, they always say, well, the likelihood that you'll catch it again is higher.
Yeah. Catch it.
Catch it. Yes. Catch it. Get it. Whatever. Get it. Again, is higher. So there must be things that you try to do to ensure that your immune system is optimal, and especially after chemo. I mean, that's just like bombing your immune system.
Yeah, there's tons of secondary gifts you have from depending on the chemo regimen, right? Which is something again, it's not a conversation piece. When you go in and you are diagnosed with cancer and you develop a treatment protocol, nobody's going to talk to you about mitigating risks.
Yeah.
When I went into chemotherapy, they were walking around serving white bread sandwiches and handing out candy and Coca-Cola. And I went to a research hospital. So at the time I didn't know any better. I was ignorant. There's so many things I do. Again, back to this idea that, we are born with a relatively clean bucket. I think it's always going to come down to, regardless of whether I had cancer or not, part of the thought process that has liberated me from that fear is going and examining what my life looked like up to cancer. I was like, I'll try to think about what were my risks. I grew up next to a chemical plant called Diaz Chemical, which is very much like an Erin Brockovich situation, which was closed down after
I watched that movie.
After I graduated. That movie, we know, Erin Brockovich. She's still doing it. She's still doing her Erin Brockovich thing.
Love it.
Yeah. Her rep reached out one time and was like, do we want to interview Erin Brockovich? I was like, yes. I haven't done it yet. But so I grew up next to a chemical plant. I grew up on a farm. Tons of pesticides around. Not a working farm, but I grew up in a horse farm. We did like Western rodeo when I grew up. And
you know who Dr. Shanna Swan is?
No.
Any chance? So she I'm sorry to cut you off there, but when you said that, that was fascinating to me because she's done research. So basically what she does is she's a fertility expert, and she is studying the correlation between fertility, especially in males, like sperm count, and pesticides and or plastics.
Yeah.
And she did like testing of people in cities and testings in people in like out in the out in the country area where there's a lot of pesticides. And what they found is that actually people who are out like in these more remote areas where there's tons of agriculture and land and they're working on is like the quality of sperm was less. They had more fertility problems.
Yeah.
All kinds of testicular, and every male that they tested the testicles for microplastics.
Yeah.
All of them.
All of them. So looking at my history, again, just wanting to understand my body on a deeper level, not getting caught up in the, I think the stories and the studies and the PFAS and the low sperm rates, it's great information. It's like, I always want to tell people, where are you empowered to do something? And so for me, I want to have a good understanding of, where are my labs today? Where's my like basic blood work look at? Where's the functional range of my thyroid, of my liver, of my bile flow, which is paramount to deburdening the body from toxins.
I haven't done that one.
How's gallbladder function? Have you done a diagnostic stool analysis? Where are my neurotransmitters sitting? So I work with a precision medicine clinic, and I do labs 4 times a year. So, and I'm not obsessive.
Blood work? Or
we do a bunch
urine,
of stuff. We do
saliva?
Saliva, urine, blood. We pull so much blood.
Okay.
Which blood work, I'd say a lot of these things that we're talking about, in the chronic illness world, which I'd say, behind the curtain of cancer, I had Lyme disease, I had high viral infections, I had this multiple autoimmune conditions happening the whole time under the terrain.
Has the symptoms of that subsided since you've been living a healthier lifestyle?
100%. Oh, I was on, and I'm not on.
You said had.
Yeah.
But what I
That's right.
understand, when you have Lyme's disease, you kind of always have it, right? But you can keep symptoms at bay.
Yeah, I
Is
mean,
that how you understand?
debatable, right?
Okay.
You can test. So there's a really good lab out there called Vibrant Labs. There's multiple ways to test for Lyme. Lyme is one of the worst tests on the world. There's a standard called the Western blot and the ELISA test, and it's like a 20 to 30% accuracy rate. It's terrible because Lyme is a very intelligent pathogen, and Lyme disease, Borrelia burgdorferi, that's a spirochete. It's a spiral bacteria.
Yep.
There are multiple infections and co-infections that come along for Lyme. So when people say I have Lyme, I'm like, tell me more about that. Have you tested for co-infections? What do your antibodies look like? What's your symptomology? So it's a very complicated box, very complicated. I use Vibrant Labs, and so there's a panel called I think it's Tick-Borne 2.0, which looks at Lyme and all Lyme's co-infections, and they have the appropriate number of they're looking at the right protein bands to see if that disease exists in the terrain. The current test that the CDC offers, there are certain bands that have been removed. It's really hard to get a positive diagnosis. When I started testing for Lyme in 2003, it took me to 2012 to get a positive diagnosis. There's a lab called iGenX Labs that was known for being kind of like they were the outside of the box company that was doing like really deep testing. Now there's Armin Labs, there's Vibrant Labs. Anyways, I use Vibrant, and if I look on my panel where I had all these co-infections, the only thing I can see, no co-infections, I can't even see a history in the immune memory. All I can see is like a little bit of like a memory of Borrelia, the one Lyme co-infection, or the main driver of Borrelia burgdorferi. So it's very minimal. I think it depends on the tone of your immune system. It's like, where are you at? How's it performing? So you can look at the functionality of the immune system. Mine is super robust, looks great on paper. If I were to eat a bunch of sugar and not sleep for a few days and get really stressed out, well, I would say I could see where I can start to see autoimmune symptoms creep back in.
Yeah.
It's a really complex conversation because you can part of the paradigm is that you feel so bad and you're so achy and so sick, the brain starts to double down and it starts to hardwire the maladaptive response to pain and inflammation. And so you have a disease, but then you have this hardwired area of what's known as your limbic system that's like making the disease even more prominent and the expression more virulent. So
almost like you're feeding into it.
Yeah, it's called your limbic. There's a training program called DNRS, Dynamic Neural Retraining System, or limbic system training. So you can do a program. There's a program called the Gupta program. Dr. Gupta would be a great guest for you. And all he does, he looks at long COVID, chronic fatigue syndrome, Lyme disease, and they have this dramatic reduction, 80%, 70%, 64% improvement in symptomology by talking to the limbic system. So it's a great conversation to show how powerful your mind is in the expression of these chronic illnesses. I think a lot of times, like for me, I was like doing everything from ozone injections to hyperbaric to stem cells. I was like just trying to kill the infection in the middle of this when my body again wasn't turning back on. I went through years of chronic fatigue syndrome and horrible, horrible pain after cancer. Really, I couldn't get good education. It was really hard to find a good practitioner who was versed or I'd say Lyme literate. And so I kind of picked up these things along the way. To answer your question, like my immune system today, it looks great. Like everything looks functional. I look at not only like infections, but I look at like how is my microbiome diversity. Like the diversity of your gut microbes will wildly inform how I experience inflammation.
Can anybody go online and just like order these tests, or do you have to have a doc that's going to do it? Like, how do people do this?
I would say with great power comes great responsibility. So if you go get one of these tests, if you probably could get some of them, and then it's like, well, what do I do with the information?
Yeah.
Because it's not valuable.
Right.
If anything, it's more harmful. And for many of the practitioners that I saw, it was more harm than good because they had taken a weekend course and they're like, oh, let's test you for this these metals or these pathogens, or, I had one camp of a doctors that were like, the only reason you're still sick is because you have high mercury. And so we're going to get the mercury out. So I did this series of chelation IVs, which were very expensive, and it's pushing mercury into your system. Imagine someone with a compromised lymphatic system. My drainage pathways aren't open. My body's already chronically fatigued. It does not have the resources to get me out of bed in the morning. Why could I handle mercury pushed out of the fat? So there's this idea that there's
because your body's put it in the fat to keep you kind of safe from it at the point, right? So maybe not quite ready to detox anyway. So
that's a working
point, right?
That's a working theory, right?
Yeah.
That the body's hyper intelligent and that it's not making a mistake. And so that's always been my belief system. I'm not broken. However, my biology was not designed for this current challenge right now. So we've got to find some workarounds. And I think that's where all like the, the next edge cutting wellness technology and bioregulatory medicine, which again, bringing lymphatics back on, working with the nervous system, developing a sleep hygiene protocol, moving daily regardless of how you feel, long-term fasting. Like these are powerful tools. You're always going to want to be guided by somebody who understands. If I wasn't, sorry, pardon my French, I fucked around for at least 15 years, making a shit ton of mistakes and doing everything you could do wrong. I definitely put myself in the hospital doing some things that I found on the internet that I was like, I could go on and on. This could be a whole podcast.
I almost want to be like, what? But I know we're getting short on time. So, okay.
It could be a whole podcast. Yeah.
So yes, I hear what you're saying. I am picking up what you're putting down because, investing in your health, I think, is a valuable thing to do. And when you have somebody who just has so much experience in the field to guide you, I think it can get you where you want to go much faster than doing it trial and error. Not that there's not value in doing trial and error, and maybe you just honestly don't have the resources to do that, and maybe the best that you can do is for yourself. I mean, you obviously got a lot of places by doing a majority of the heavy lifting yourself and doing the research, and it's not to say it can't be done, but I will tell you that when you find somebody, though, that's seen so much and they've worked with so many people and they've seen so many different walks of life and those experiences, they can usually route you in the right direction, or at least point you in the right direction, help you get to where you actually need to be.
You're really looking for a space holder, right? It's really the patient is going to heal. I feel like a really good practitioner is holding up a mirror. I think they're asking better questions.
Yeah.
They're holding you accountable. They're making sense of some of the information they're getting back from the body. But you should have a practitioner that embraces that the healing is done from the body, that the system is an intelligent system. So if I run a test on you and we do a vibrant total tox burden, have you done one of those?
No.
Oh my God, let's do a total tox burden on you.
I'm down.
So we would collect urine, right? And we're going to look for your metal burden, metal toxicity, environmental toxicants. So like VOCs coming in from your furniture or your environmentals.
What's a VOC?
Volatile organic compound.
Okay.
Like I can't name one for you, but VOCs are bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bad for the immune system.
Okay.
Can be multiple different anything
like
from
is it similar like an endocrine disruptor? They act in that way.
Yep.
Similar things like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we could have like VOCs, we could have we could have pesticides, and then we could have molds. Mold is very, very common. That's a really interesting thing. So we could run this panel and we could say, hey, you could easily take that data and be like, oh my God, look at what's wrong with me. Whereas someone that's informed would be say, wait a minute, you're hydrating, you're eating clean. Actually, maybe this is what your body's willing to let go of right now at this time. Now, I've run one of these tests by just collecting urine, and then I've run one by doing a Flopresso lymphatic drainage and a sauna, and then collecting the next day. I just did this experiment, and it was like some of the things were like in the 98th percentile. This is someone who's done for 15 years. I've done breath work and fasting and only eating organic and, coffee enemas. You name it. I've done it, right? Consistently, not one-offs. So the fact that when I stimulated my body through heat and lymphatic drainage to ask my body to let go of extra things from the tissue, I had all these pesticides. It was wild. All my metals were almost normal, but I had some good mold, some gliotoxin, the ones that impact the brain, and then ones that were, I had a bunch of pesticides. I can only assume that's from growing up on a farm, and this is something that my body's still letting go of.
Well, there's a lot of pesticides still on organic food, unfortunately.
There are.
There's that too. I mean, even if
Right.
it's, organic, we pay more for it, but some pesticides are, they're still there, unfortunately. So
That's right.
we're still getting that too.
That's right. But
It's like hard to work around it.
it's hard. I think so I'm putting together this academy right now, and every practitioner, and I've done 264 episodes and like hundreds of doctors, some of the best surgeons in the world, some of the most sought after people that are treating stage 4 cancers. Pretty much everybody is like lifestyle. Like we can come in, we can make a shift within a few weeks with hyperbarics and some of these fancy technologies. But the long game,
Yes,
the
is
long
what
game
you
is
do
like you
every
have a
day.
cellular cleanup system, which will be kicked into high gear after 72-hour fast,
Mm-hmm.
48-hour fast, but then it's going to keep doubling down, right? I'm not saying people don't eat food. Be responsible, and you can also you can use this as a tool in your toolbox if it's called for. But it works, and you have that on board.
Mm-hmm.
That little Pac-Man game that happens when we stop feeding the body.
Right.
Animals stop eating when they're sick. We are just like, yeah, let's feed the cold.
Yeah. No, I'm glad to learn that because my kids, when they get sick, like if they don't want to eat, I don't push it on them. I'm like, you need to eat chicken noodle soup. No, I'm just like, no, your body knows best, and I'm not going to make you do that. But that was something that it's always like parents feel like, and people is like, you need nutrition. But it's like, well, technically your body should have banked a lot of that. And right now it needs to rest the digestive tract, so it doesn't have to work through that. So we can put the energy right into
That's right.
into the immune system. So are you big on probiotics? And what's your diet like?
Oh my God, what is my diet?
Do you eat fermented foods? You said organic, but like, do you eat, like, what do you eat?
Like you want a day in the diet of
Sure.
me?
Give me, yeah.
So this morning I had the muffins.
Those,
They don't know this, but I started our episode. I gifted you a muffin.
It was so good.
It was pretty good.
Tell me about the muffins. Keto?
Yeah, they're cute. Well, sometimes. So
Okay.
normally it's like those muffins are Equip protein, which it's a full animal protein, low histamine, tested for cleanliness,
Mm-hmm.
coconut flour, eggs, a little bit of clean baking soda, some sea salt, and blueberries, and and a fat coconut oil. That's it. That's it.
They were surprisingly, I mean, even the bread part of it was like sweet.
I know. Yeah.
I mean, it was nice. Like it wasn't overwhelmingly sweet, but it was really nice.
No.
I didn't feel a crash because it's been like an hour since I ate that
Yeah.
at least, but there was no come down. So that's
No.
really nice. I like them.
So something like that in the morning. Sometimes I don't eat. Sometimes I'll have, depending on how I feel. I usually have like a midday Instapot. So I love cooking in the Instapot because I can just throw vegetables and protein in there and just set it and forget it. And so this afternoon for lunch, I had chicken thighs with snap peas and carrots and cabbage. I will often do a tablespoon of a ferment, like a Bubby's pickles or a sauerkraut or fermented beets.
Yep.
I do love probiotics. Again, context is king. There are people that probiotics are not right for, and if your body is overwhelmed with histamines, then a lot of times these foods that are deemed as healthy, we can feel really bad. It can trigger flushing, it can trigger a rash, it can trigger diarrhea, it can trigger brain fog, especially if the I don't know if you ever talked about leaky gut on the podcast, but the wall of the small bowel is very thin, and if it starts to get
I just had Nurse Doze on.
Oh my God, amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Talked all about leaky gut.
Leaky gut, leaky gut. So yeah, the food that we're eating, we can get these large proteins floating around the blood stream that are triggering the immune system. And your immune system might go in to start attacking the cartilage in your knee on some foods. I had that experience all the time. I would eat healthy foods and I would get really inflamed. Like it'd be really hard to get out of bed in the morning. So I say context is king, meaning that probiotics are good. It might not be the first step. It might be an elimination diet. It might be saying, hey, we're going to take all the trigger foods out. We're going to take all the processed foods out. We're going to slow things down. We're going to look at something that's healing to your gut lining first. And then maybe probiotics are downstream.
Right.
Maybe first we need to run some antimicrobials and say you're overloaded with lots of fungus and a bunch of parasites. And we want to look at that first. Because everything's going to feed off the food you give your body.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, everything.
Everything.
That's a good point.
So an Instant Pot, and then I'll say dinner could be like a really clean steak. I get a delivery service from a really clean farm here in Austin. So it's like
Do you know the name of it? The farm? Do you remember off the top?
Wild Pastures.
Okay.
Wild
I would like to
Pastures
give
is
them
one
a
of.
good shout out if they're doing something good, you know. And
Oh, they're great.
yeah, give them.
They're great.
I get my meat from Lazy J Meats, and I love it.
Yeah.
He has pasture raises his cows, grows
Yeah.
his own hay, no antibiotics.
Yep.
It's very clean meat. I visited the ranch and fed the cows, and it was like
Fun.
It's an amazing thing that he's doing. It's
Yeah.
getting harder and harder to do, for Americans.
It is hard because more people want that clean food. It doesn't scale, which is I think about that too. Like the equality of some of the stuff that we're talking about doesn't scale across different economies or different yearly incomes for many families. A lot of times it's like trying to do the best you can with what you have.
Right.
So it's that, again, it's a shake or the muffins, it's an Instant Pot, and then like a really clean steak, maybe like roasting chicken breasts or salmon once a week. I try to do fish once a week because that's a big one for me. Keeping my omega-3 up helps my inflammatory profile. And no dairy. I don't do dairy. I can do goat cheese.
Okay.
Yep, I can do goat cheese. I just don't. I think for a long time that was a trigger food for me. So now it's just, and I'm not missing out on anything.
I love cheese. I don't know if I'd really cut.
I love cheese. I can do goat cheese.
Yeah.
I just got to watch.
Goat cheese. I love all the cheese.
Yeah. I have to watch. I can do Pecorino Romano, like a hard cheese. That's like good for my system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm with you. As far as, I like dairy. Well, I like cheese a lot, but milk for me definitely can bloat. It's not bad. I'll still drink milk. It's not like I'm gonna be like, oh, if I want milk, I'm not gonna drink it. But I get like the raw milk and stuff like that now.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
But the body's so neat in the way that it communicates, and there's
wild.
Yeah, there's a lot here that I think we talked about, and this was really amazing. Thank you for sharing your story, especially the more vulnerable parts about everything that you went through with the cancer, and even the story I don't really want to laugh at about your staple bursting off of your belly and blood fluid, but you've been through the ringer, but you're here now. And I think you're a testament for lifestyle change and how it can really impact people. So I'm just grateful you were able to share this with me today. So thank you. I think I learned a lot, and I'd love to get together and run some of these tests and then, talk about it on a podcast and see where I'm at.
We should do a part 2, and we should get you an environmental tox panel.
Let's do that.
That'd be fascinating. And have you do.
Do you do this for kids too?
I don't. I'm talking about this, and I said at the top, I'm more of like a wellness concierge.
Yes.
I'm not acting as a practitioner.
Do they do it for kids?
They do. They do it for anybody.
Great.
Yeah, they do it for anybody. And my partner is a PA, so she can order tests. And I have plenty of people. Again, it's about you want to get the data, then you want to get somebody that can understand what do we do with this information? How do we not freak out?
Yeah.
Because this is part of life, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is part of life where we're at today. And, looking at things like, again, good hydrate. 70% of Americans are dehydrated. Do you know how many cellular functions go out the
out the
boat?
You're not hydrated.
We're not hydrated.
So
I
true.
mean, just hydration. Again, I think a lot of times we're looking at these things that we're picking up on Instagram, like the bad numbers or the stats or the evil things, and then people are immediately selling you something on the other side.
Right.
A lot of it is I'm having these conversations so we can remove some of the fear around it. I'm not going to sell you like the bonfire and then here's the bucket to put it out. I want to have the conversation with people, bring the awareness. There's plenty of practitioners out there that can run a vibrant panel, but that's not your only piece. The other thing is be like, let's really have fun. Let's run your genetics. Let's run your genetic SNPs and see how you handle pesticides and molds and metals. Then let's see what's in the terrain.
Yeah.
And then let's look at your labs and make sure organs and everything's firing good. And then let's just take a peek at drainage pathways. Make sure that your lymph is flowing, your intracellular, extracellular fluid ratio, and then we would say, okay, now here's a way we could go. Here's a path we could walk to get some of these toxins out over the next year, really the next life, because detox does not happen in 2 weeks.
Right.
Doesn't happen. There are no juice cleanses. I call total. That's the most triggering thing. People are like, I'm doing a 2-week cleanse. I have done this. I have cleansed for, you can do a 2-week kickstart. You can feel great. But I have cleansed. I've lived the lifestyle of opening drainage pathways since 2007 till today, right? Mostly, really 2012, 11, I was really into it. I still have my level of I did a platinum-based chemotherapy drug. I'm still at like the 56th percentile. So,
and going down is good, or
going
up
down. So I was at like the 98th percentile.
Okay.
So it's that platinum is slowly leaving my tissues, right?
Oh,
that was a
process.
It's a long process.
Yeah.
Some things are long, some are short, some are going to be a lifestyle, but you got to, all I'll say is like, you want to prepare the body so you shouldn't feel like death. If you feel like death while you're doing one of these detox experiments or a 2-week sprint, it's because you push beyond your body's capability to handle what's coming out. So you really should, I want to, from my
drive
experience,
that home.
You'll have practitioners be like, oh, this is good. This is a healing response. Your nervous system is not happy in that spot. So I would just challenge that as someone who's been on the other side of the table and listened to so many people. And finally people get it. And they're like, oh my God, I got to hydrate. I got to get up with the sun. I have to journal every day. I need to take time away from food. I need to move every single day, not once for an hour. I got to break it up, right? I have to look at the language that I use to my body when I look in the mirror. Like those are synergistic. It's not 1 and 1 and 1 and 1 equals 5. That's like 100.
Yeah.
You're going to knock it out of the park.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything else we should go over today because that was
Great.
amazing. It was perfect. I loved it. And I can't wait for us to do this again. So
cool.
Until next time, we'll get some panels and we'll talk about, we'll air everything out when it comes to my blood work and
so
my
fun.
everything. All right. Thank you.
Big love.